I feel like there's something big I should be talking about now.
Take this.
Black Country, New Road. Ends from up there. The hype for this record got me exhilarated to check this thing out. And I guess it took a toll on me, because I still prefer For the First Time over this one. Don't get me wrong, I think this record is amazing. Damn, at many points can be even better than the predecessor. It's a way more chambery record, which makes its breakdowns feel even more powerful, and the lyricism here is even more poetic and intense than it wasn't For the First Time. But I don't know. I feel like there were some points where this record didn't leave a very strong mark in my brain, the negative highlights especially. It may be the overwhelming hype of the record that made me expect too much from it, or simply a matter of taste. But I hope eventually those personal low points click with me, and I can see the record in the same degree of excellence everyone is seeing. But even if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I still think it's a really good record, and it still has a decent chance of making it to my top 50 at the end of the year. Just not better than their debut to me. Positive highlights on screen now, and the score here is 83%. Robert Glasper, Black Radio 3. Honestly, this is my favorite Robert Glasper record. It's not too different from his previous works, much less the Black Radio series. But I feel like this is where they most nail the balance between smooth soulful beats and the staying power needed for a record to stay in your memory. Want me to say something more? Too bad Waluigi time, that's all I got sadly. There isn't much new here to talk about, so I'll leave it at this. At least it was a positive review. Highlights unveiling on screen, and in consecution the score of 84%. Big Crit. Digital Roses Don't Die. I think I may have been teleported to a dimension where this album is not bad, because I don't hate this album as much as other people do. Is it Forever's a Mighty Long Time good? Absolutely not. This record stands so much in the shadow of Forever that it died of lack of vitamin D. And there's a lot to criticize here. K.R.I.T feels like he forgot how to have a distinct vocal personality. There are some moments in here that feel absolutely monotonous, looking at you, negative highlights. This without mentioning the points where it feels like there was no thought put over the beats and even the lyrics. But there are some tracks in here that I think can go from enjoyable to, get this, great. Especially when the record decides to dive into the soft funk vibe. I found those moments to be really entertaining, and I believe if K.R.I.T did a whole album in that style that it would honestly be pretty good. But as is, I consider this record to be a pretty mixed bag. I still enjoy it overall, but knowing K.R.I.T, he could do way better. Positive highlights, 66%. Big Thief. Dragon New War Mountain, I Believe in You. This album was my first experience with Big Thief, and now I can only say one thing. I get why the band has his name. They totally stole my heart with this album. My holy cockatoo. This is one of those albums that it's worth so much to invest the time. It has 1 hour and 20 minutes, an intimidating length. But trust your boy here, because during all the duration of this project, the sound of angels massaging your ears will be present, and all the time will pass in the blink of an eye. But no, don't worry, you won't enter in a deep trance and wake up in a shed in Philippines. You spend the whole time appreciating how, despite simple, this folk project blends in the musical genres with an ease that it looks like they're mixing Shocky Milk. Folk, rock, Americana, country, and even psychedelia, it's all here. And the result is one of the best folk albums to come out in recent memory. Just look at the obelisk of highlights this album has to understand what I'm talking about. Oh, and the score here is 88%. Alt-J, The Dream. Words to define this album. Innocuous, pleasant, unobtrusive, unoffending, calm, clean, friendly, humble, innocent, innoxious, mild, neutral. Well, at least I can say it sounds nice, and I like the chamber pop influences. But outside of that, yeah, there isn't much to say. It is what it is. I just totally won't remember it an hour from now. And I know what Alt-J is capable of. Much better stuff than this. Highlights, 59%. Eddie Vedder, Earthling. Great Eddie Vedder, lead singer of one of my favorite bands. He just released a new solo work. Expectations? I don't know. His last album with Pearl Jam was as tasty as eating styrofoam, so they weren't all that high, you know what I'm saying? But thanks to the love of the Holy Spirit, this album was better than expected. The first track got me all like this. So I already got more pumped up. And besides nothing really reaching the apex of that song, I still dug the experience of the record. And also think the genre fusions were well put together. Not always though. You won't leave this record saying, "Sweet Jesus, I'm a new person now, I need to quit my job and lay to my boss in honor of this album." But most likely it will surpass your expectations.
Unless you set the bars high because of this review. Shit, I'm entering another dilemma, am I?
Anyway, positive highlights, here they are. The score, 73%. Black Dresses, Forget Your Own Face.
New Black Dresses album? I mean, I'm not usually a huge fan of their stuff, but sure, let's do it.
So try to have fun.
Again. So, this is what being electrocuted feels like, huh? Black Dresses made an album that is only 20 minutes long. But as the saying goes, the best perfumes come in small packages because it's their best album yet. And it's also possibly their most aggressive. And that's saying something. Have you ever heard their music before? It sounds like they're going to come out of the speakers and proceed to crack your skull open. But it's not only the aggressiveness that makes this record stand out. It's also the strange quirkiness of the glitched out instrumentals and the vocal performances combined with the super self-loading lyrics that make it all sound uncomfortably sarcastic. And there we go. I'd never expected to enjoy their music that much. But look where we are now. This is the album of the month. All I can say is that this is one of the most bizarre and entertaining things I've heard in quite a while. Highlights on screen, and score is 94% superb. Conway the Machine, God Don't Make Mistakes. Conway the Machine may someday be responsible for the rise of Skynet, but at least he's dropping some fantastic music in our way in the process. I think this is possibly the sharpest his lyricism has ever gotten, with him dropping some of the most heavyweight bars I've heard in any Griselda project. Plus, some really outstanding beats make their way here. There is a small stretch in the middle of the record that the songs felt more like a whole piece of beige nothing, but it doesn't take too long to recover from that. Also, the outro of the final song of the record was one of the most heartbreaking things I've heard in an album I've reviewed. And while it's not a mind-blowing project, I believe this is possibly the strongest and most substantial project released by Conway. Positive highlights, score of 81%. Naxatras, 4. I love stoner rock, I love psychedelic rock, but Naxatras has always come out to me as just a slightly above average act in both genres. And with their 4th album, with the super original title 4, I think they're getting closer to going above the threshold. But honestly, at that pacing, they're probably only doing that in 16 or something. There are many good points in this thing, moments the artists show instrumental virtuosity, and some really potent compositions. Nevertheless, there are also tracks that feel like royalty-free music. Luckily the first case is way more common, so I still think it was a good record overall, but the flaws are still very clear. And if Naxatras want to make a name for themselves, they really need to step up their game. 75%. Mitski, Laurel. Cutting to the chase, this is straight up Mitski going pop and new wave. And I know there already may be a legion ready to call her sell out, sell out, sell out. But no, it's not 100% in that lane. I feel like despite that aspect, it doesn't look out of place in her discography. Mitski always had some pop tendencies in her sound. This is just the first album where those tendencies take center stage. And yeah, it's possibly her weakest album in a while, but I don't think the sound is to blame for that. It's more the compositions that can be a bit underwhelming, notably the negative highlights. But it's not a bad album at all. I still had fun listening to it, and the positive highlights can stand on their own pretty nicely. If she keeps in this direction, I hope her next record can show that side of her music in a more robust way. 74%. Avril Lavigne, Love Sucks. This review may be longer than my usual ones, but it's because this album is a really big deal for me. For context, I'm a bit biased because I adore early Avril Lavigne. Let Go and Under My Skin are 2 of my favorite albums of all time, so considering the proposal of Love Sucks, I was eagerly concerned. Now, the album is here, and I gotta say, this is the most I've enjoyed an Avril Lavigne album in a very long time. There are some really good hooks in here, and the sound of this record does remind me of better times. Even the void of charisma that is Machine Gun Kelly managed to do a decent job in here. Black Bear on the other hand, why is this guy famous? Now let's move to the downsides. And the first one can be traced right from the album cover, which gives me the impression that this 37-year-old woman is pretending to be a child again. I don't entirely think that's bad, it's okay to try to revisit younger better days in your concepts. But I feel like that makes the more immature and whiny moments of this record hit a sour note. I'm not saying that her old albums didn't have that, but to balance it out, there were many standout moments from those records that she showed herself to be incredibly mature for her age. Check Nobody's Home for an example of that. And there's also another thing that can be a two-edged sword in here, that is about the sound of the record. As I mentioned, I like it. You won't be getting a Let Go or Under My Skin rehash here, which is good, I didn't want it to be that. But instead, it feels a bit like the modern pop-punk sound, plus a merging of her first 5 albums, which encompasses also some of her negative sides, such as the overproduction in some points, that haunted some of her self-titled's worst moments. So to conclude, yes, I did enjoy the record, more than I was expecting, believe it or not, but I don't know if this thing is going to age well, considering how some aspects of its production are so of its time. But regardless, I had fun listening to this, which is what matters. And I hope whatever Avril does next is righting the wrongs of this album, or maybe even something good and brand new. Anything can happen. Well, I already spent too much time in this, so positives, negatives, 77%.
Beach House. Once Twice Melody. My relationship with Beach House is the same one as the one of John Mayer and Shigeru Miyamoto. Oh, what's that? These two don't have any relation whatsoever? Exactly.
I always indirectly avoided Beach House for them being a group of dream pop, a genre that is somewhat connected to shoegaze, and I think it's easier for Guy Fieri to release a good conscious hip-hop album than me liking a shoegaze record. So even though I always wanted to listen to Beach House to get a vision of my own, I always left them to the side. Now, new album, everyone going nuts, perfect opportunity, and dude, I was really missing something, huh? I'm really impressed by how well the band keeps its hypnotic aesthetic in a way that hooks you throughout its almost 1 hour and a half of length. Granted, I think there could be some cuts here and there to make the album a bit more easy to digest, but even so, I totally get the hype now. And I'm considering doing a newbie ranks for Beach House after that. Check the positive highlights for a taste, maybe ignore the negatives, and the score I give to this record is 82%.
Midnight Oil. Resist. Midnight Oil, the band mostly known for Beds Are Burning, just released their first proper studio album in 20 years, and it's one of the best albums of their entire careers.
Sounds like a joke, but it absolutely isn't. These guys never got their due respect outside of Australia, and this album only confirms that. It's not too out there, the lyrics are exactly what you would expect from them, and sound-wise, it's basically the same they always had, just with a more modern production taking over. This is a description that sometimes may be negative, but they made the right choice in this, because after all these years, they still got great hooks, amazing performances, and much more that feels like they barely aged. Based on what the band has said, this may be their final record, and if it is, what an amazing swan song we got. Thanks for being one of the greatest Australian bands that ever existed. Here are the highlights on screen, score of 85%. Yes, higher than Beach House, higher than BCNR. Hope this motivates you to check this out.
Animal Collective. Time Skiffs.
Once upon a time, there was a sweet little baby boy named Marshall. When he was just a toddler, Marshall used to do huge quantities of nothing the entire day. But when he grew up, he found a peculiar group of gods. Gods that looked like an animal collective, and then gave him Merryweather Post Pavilion. With a rare jewel in hands, Marshall put his headphones and listened to the craft with all his attention. He thought it was alright, nothing special, and never heard the album again. The end. Just kidding. Years passed, Marshall was still doing lots of nothing, but now with anxiety. Until the gods returned, and they gave him time skiffs. And from this day on, Marshall's life was never the same. He didn't love the album, but he thought it was pretty neat, with songs that surprised him, and despite it getting a bit diluted in the second half, it was enough to light up a flame that was never lit. The flame of Marshall's interest in checking the band more often. Is this the start of a new musical journey in the life of this young commoner? We'll know that in the next episode. I began this as a fairy tale and it ended up like a Pokemon episode. Nice. Anyway, here are the highlights and a score of 77%.
Tears for Fears. The Tipping Point. I gotta commend Tears for Fears for their new studio album to be unlike any of their previous ones. But I also take that comment back because this album is also probably their blandest.
If this wasn't labeled as a Tears for Fears record,
I'd have totally guessed this is another nobody the band that popped out of nowhere that would release an OK record and would disappear afterwards. The OK part happened though. This isn't anything special, but there were a couple of moments and I still had a bit of fun. Still, nothing special. My only true disappointment here is that they didn't name the album Songs from the Spinning Chairs. I mean, look at that album cover, it was a perfect opportunity. And by the way, the score here is 63%. Man, that's a weird collage we got this month. It feels randomly generated. Wait, am I an AI?